There we go. We're live on YouTube now.
Cool.
No, I don't want to hear myself talking. There we go. All right, so we're streaming that now. All right. So are we ready? Everybody ready to go live? Oh, hold on. I need to bring Lauren on, our other co-host. Yeah, so tonight you'll be chatting with me, Justin.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Sherika.
Hi.
Hello.
Maybe Tim, and as well as Lauren. You probably won't remember all of our names for a while, but it's basically the whole Darknite Paranormal crew.
Cool.
Let's see here. Let's see. Let's try to get Lauren on. You still there, Brian?
Yep.
All right, just making sure I can still hear you okay. Lauren, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. We're not live yet. We're about to go live here in a second. I was trying to get everything set up. We're broadcasting on YouTube live right now.
Okay, cool.
Finally got it set up to where it pick all of our audio up and everything. Of course, I still ain't figured out how to get Skype to show on OBS yet. Once I do that, our guest and all of us will be on video on YouTube.
YouTube. Oh, that's cool. That'd be pretty cool.
All right, so we're about to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah, hold on. Before we do that, actually, I gotta send you that link, Brian. Give me just a second.
That's static.
Yeah. All right. Everything's running slow right now because I got so much going on at once on the computer. Hey, we got 1,071 plays, guys.
Nice.
All right. Now I'm going to send you this link. All right, Brian, I just sent it to you in IM, brother.
Cool.
Yeah, they can just click on that, and when we go live, they'll be able to log in. They'll be able to log in on Spreaker with Facebook and chat with us and all. You can also go on there and be in the chat as well if you'd like, Brian.
Okay.
All you got to do is you can go on your phone and log in with Facebook on Spreaker from your phone with that on that link, and you'll be able to get in the chat and stuff too.
Okay.
All right, now we're about to go live. I'll get the show started, and then we'll bring you on as well, Brian. Well, you'll be on there, but introduce you and everything.
Cool.
All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on Darknite Radio. We are coming to you live from Fort Smith, Arkansas, this lovely Friday evening. Should be a very, very interesting show. As you're aware by now, or you may or may not be aware by now, but we actually do have an investigation this evening after the radio show as well. That'll be at 11:30 Central Standard Time. Y'all will definitely want to go check out some of the live feeds and whatnot that we'll be doing this evening as well. Of course, I do have one of my co-hosts, Miss Lauren Scamardo, here on the air with us.
Hey guys.
I also have Mr. Justin McGuire.
Always in the building.
And Sherika is here as well.
Hey guys.
And Tim, he's running around somewhere, guys. He's helping his wife, Christy, make cups and whatnot this evening, so he might be tuning in off and on. And so we'll go ahead and get this lovely show rolling along this evening, and we would like to welcome Mr. Brian Phillips to Darknite Radio for the first time here on and also he is from the Ghost Pit is your group, correct?
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Oh, most certainly, most certainly. So we'll go ahead and start out, Brian, if you would. Just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself. I know me and you have been talking for a little bit now, and I do know that kind of you was basically a stillborn, so to speak, and I think, and in my opinion, and I know you believe the same as well, in my opinion, that has quite a bit to do with the paranormal abilities that you have. And that you've had, and the paranormal experiences as well that you've had throughout your life. If you would, just kind of tell everybody, though, what got you interested in investigating itself. And also, you can feel free to share the story about when you were born and whatnot as well.
Yeah, cool. The neat part about that, obviously, I don't remember any bit of it because I was way too young.
Yeah.
But, when I was born, I had the cord was wrapped around my neck 4 times. So, I was born clinically dead. And by the time I was 6, I wasn't allowed to go to my grandmother's funeral. So the following year after she passed away, she was actually the very first shadow figure that I saw at 6 years old. So I kind of had an early introduction into, the whole spirit side of it. And growing up, I would spend my summers at my grandparents' house on my dad's side, who happened to be morticians and a beautician in the funeral home business. So I spent my summers at the funeral home with them, in their apartment above it. So I was around death a lot growing up, and that kind of sparked my interest in, the whole afterlife, death, and things like that. So I had a very early foothold on it.
Sounds like it for sure. And
a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting story as well, because that's not something we hear about every day on a day-to-day basis. I mean, of course, there is a lot of children unfortunately, that was born that way, and a lot of them weren't so lucky. A lot of them didn't get the opportunity to come into the world and be a part of the world and whatnot. So it's always kind of a different experience when you get to live and tell that story, and tell your experience and kind of. And do you feel like that played a lot in part to what you've experienced in the paranormal throughout life?
It is, because from the time I was 6 and I saw that, and I had other things happen growing up at my parents' house, which to this day they refuse to necessarily believe what the stories are. But it was always the idea that what else was out there, and obviously I didn't have the opportunity that I do now. When myself and Suzanne, the other founder of the team, she had things happen to her as well when her daughter was born and throughout her life. So when our best friend passed away 2 years ago, we had a very, I don't even know the word to describe it, surreal, I guess.
Yeah.
Right after he passed away, and over the following couple months after his death, we just tossed around the idea that if we had, the experiences that we had through, coming up to this point, other people had them as well. Only we had our answers. We knew we had our answers, but there were people out there that didn't, and we wanted to use our experiences to help them get answers to their questions about it. So, we formed the Ghost Pit, and we went from two people in the team to now we have 10. So we all share that same passion.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty interesting. So basically, how long ago was it, did you say, when you started the group? When y'all started the group?
We started last year, right around January 20th, and so we're about 13, 14 months into it. I guess a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, that's kind of like Darknite. Now, me and Justin were with another group. Kind of didn't really like the way things were going with the group, so to speak. So me and Justin broke off. Lauren wasn't really part of that group, so to speak. The other group, she did go on a couple investigations, I think maybe one or two, before we branched off and went our separate ways. When would you say that was when we started Darknite, Justin? Was that March?
March of 17?
I think it was around March of last year. So,
yeah.
So y'all started y'all's a couple months before we branched off. But me and Justin had actually been a part of the old group for 4 years before we started Darknite. So we, in total, me and Justin together, we're both co-leads, co-founders of Darknite Paranormal Society and whatnot. But yeah, so in total, I would say we've been in it about 5 years on the investigating side. I've always been somewhat of a believer in the paranormal. I've had several unexplainable experiences throughout my life, as well as yourself, Brian. A lot of things I couldn't explain, and then here I am 5 years later. I never thought, when I was younger, even my grandma and everybody says, "You were such a scaredy cat when you were younger. What happened?" I'm all like, well, I guess I grew up. I don't know. And I feel like it's my calling. I don't know about how you feel about in that aspect, but I think even if I wanted to quit paranormal investigating at this point in my career, I wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't leave me alone. I wouldn't have a choice in the matter.
And that's just it. That's the tough thing. We go and we do these investigations, and we have the equipment here, and we technically don't try to investigate the house, but
yeah,
the dowsing rods are laying on the table, and you get that you get that heavy feeling. So they get picked up, they get used. Suzanne is, using her abilities that she's picking up on, and you go from the one or two that are in the house to that conversation where, hey, I just got a response of 4 in the house, so of the 2, you don't know who the other 2 are, and it's it kind of just fits.
Yeah, and I mean, like me, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've watched all of us. I think everybody at some point has watched these paranormal TV shows and whatnot that they have on TV. And I think it piques a lot of people's interest in it. I mean, like I said, I've been interested in it. I was watching Ghost Adventures, which a lot of people hate, but you know how it goes. But no, I was watching Ghost Adventures, and I'd watch like Paranormal Witness and things like that. And it was very interesting and intriguing to me, but it never really became a reality for me until I lived in this house with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and she had 6 kids, but some of the occurrences in that house is what really opened my eyes up to it. It'd be 2 or 3 in the morning, we'd hear children running through the house upstairs. Sounded like children were running back and forth upstairs in the house. So it was kind of crazy, but I mean, the doors would open by themselves, stuff would fall off the counters by itself, nobody would be in there, and that's what really made me reach out to Michael Todd, who was our old lead investigator at the time. I'd called several groups, and a lot of the groups around here were assholes. They're all like, "Oh, we don't let anybody come in our group or whatnot," and I was all like, "I just want the experience. I want to get to experience it." And finally, I got a hold of Michael and Justin here. He was the skeptic at the time. He was pretty much I guess I would say for the most part, a non-believer. And so I talked him into going with me on our first investigation with Michael. And it just so happened there's an old hospital here in Arkansas, and I always call it the miniature version of Waverly Hills because it really is. I haven't been to Waverly yet, but
no, me neither.
but I'm going. We're going actually. May 23rd, we'll be investigating Waverly Hills for our first time. In the 5 years I've been investigating. We actually got to do Bobby Mackey's Music World back in September of last year as well. But yeah, so I'll let Justin share how he felt after we left that old Arkansas hospital, Mr. Skeptic here.
The very first time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I am the former skeptic of this group, no longer the skeptic of this group, obviously, or I couldn't be hanging in here as long as I've been. So the first night was pretty crazy. I mean, it's dead in the middle of what, June? Probably June.
It was May.
May.
It was either the beginning or end of May. The first actual investigation we went on.
Anyways, it's hot as hell in this building. I mean, there's no air, there's no breeze. So I'm feeling all these cold spots, and I'm trying to think, maybe it's just some kind of little breeze that I'm feeling, but there's no breeze in the building, so I'm trying to brush that off, thinking, it's nothing. And the more we go in there and we start hearing all these noises, and I'm just like, okay, I'm starting to feel it a little more, starting to pick up the vibe, and then we enter the basement of this old hospital, and then I'm just like, well, when shit gets thrown off the table and there's nobody back there, yeah, there's a whole different feeling. And then this place is about 45 minutes to an hour back from where we live, so for the whole 45 minute to hour car ride, I was speechless. There was no words coming out of my mouth. I was like, did I just witness what I think I did? And I didn't want to say, I'm still trying to relive it all. I'm still trying to see if that was real. But yeah, from that day on, from the next day on, everywhere we went, I was hooked. That night sunk me in, and I've been here ever since.
So I know. Go ahead, Brian.
Unfortunately, as a skeptic, and we go into a lot of, most of the investigations with that little bit of skepticism, but the full-on skeptics, unfortunately, they have their moment of getting hit in the forehead by a 2x4, because that's almost the feeling from, that one moment. We had an investigation at a haunted house attraction here not too long ago, and one of the newer members of the team, he was on the fence, and during our opening prayer, where I'm standing there and I'm doing the opening prayer, and all of a sudden the door where the actors would traverse through the building it started to open on its own, and the look on his face was, of shock. And we tried to debunk that door opening, from the floor getting, kind of bowed from us walking. It took a lot of what I had to push that door open. So I knew it wasn't just us standing in the room. And we had a couple other things happen. And to this day, he still talks about that investigation as his, almost aha moment, because that was his turning point. It is live radio.
Oh, yeah.
The cool thing when we have our public stuff that we do at the Capitol Theater, a lot of the people that we get come in there, automatically look at us cross-eyed, that, I'm skeptic. I just wanted to see what this was all about. And unfortunately, they have that 2x4 across the forehead moment, and they come to the end and they say, I came as a skeptic, I'm leaving a believer. And we're not there to change their mind on that, but, kind of open their mind up to the idea of the possibilities of more than just what we perceive day to day.
Yeah.
So that's a cool story.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and here's a funny one. It's funny you mentioned that 2x4 to the head, Brian. Mr. Matthew Bennett, he's also another radio host here on our lovely with our Beyond the Light Network family. They do tours. They're actually from Iowa. They do tours, and they were doing this tour in this old school building, and I guess it was a young kid, 19, 20 years old, thinks the world can't touch him and whatnot. And he was making fun of the investigators and stuff that were there and all this shit ain't real. So this is interesting. I would have paid to see this. So he's just talking crap, mocking people that are talking there and whatnot. And they said, no joke, about that time, a brick launched off the ground, smacked him right between the eyes, and knocked him out cold. I was all like, I would have paid to see that. I'm all like, it's one thing to be a skeptic, but when you sit here and you put us down for the things we do, and you won't even go check it out for yourself, or even attempt to check it out and see what it's about yourself, and you're going to sit here and dog on me for what I do and everything and say it's not real. I would have loved to have seen that, though. They said that brick smacked him right between the eyes, and there was like 10 people that was there that witnessed it. Knocked him out cold on the floor.
Well, he had his Home Alone moment then, so that everything we do is based on, being respectful and, giving them the opportunity to continue to share their story that they no longer can do on our plane. Yeah. And we had I had a very surreal moment. We did a private investigation, and I broke one of my cardinal rules that we always investigate with somebody. And we went to this location. Yeah, it wasn't pretty because for one reason or another, this one had to leave, and we had responsibilities at home. So I knew that one of them was leaving. The other one had to get home to her kids. And then the other one I thought was going to stay for the night. And she ended up having to go home around 1:30 and said pretty much, good luck. And so, part of the house was dangerous anyway, not because of the activity, but because of the history in the house. So, I don't know if you can see the little clown that's on the bookshelf behind me.
Look.
Let me.
Yeah, bring it
so
closer. Bring it
well,
closer.
I brought him.
There you go.
I brought him along as a trigger object, and he talks.
Can you see Brian's video?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I'm going to have nightmares tonight, and if I'm over to...
What is that noise?
So that I was going to use that as a trigger object because he actually talks through sound. If he'll go off if there's noises and stuff.
I'd scare myself every time.
Well, I sat him in the chair, and before the cat left, who's our sensitive, she said, the little boy that was in the house was going to mess with me. And I thought, okay, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And the whole time I'm in this house by myself, I'm hearing people walking around upstairs, and I'm waiting for that clown to go off.
Oh, man.
And I'm sitting in the chair, and the other team members were calling me to check up on me because I was in this house by myself. And one of the messages I got, again, was don't go upstairs by yourself, but he's waiting for you to go to sleep so he can mess with you. And I'm thinking, okay, I just want to go to sleep. So I started to fall asleep, and I had a mesh ball cap on, and I could feel fingers rubbing my hair up under my hat from behind the chair. And again, I got Tommy, who's the little clown. I got him sitting across from me, and it was one of those things where you just wanted to, and I apologize for the dogs growling and barking.
Good.
I'm just waiting for this activity, and I could feel this little child's fingers going up under my hat, touching, rubbing my head.
Wow.
It was just,
That's insane.
really neat.
Wow.
That's crazy.
But yeah, he's my little buddy.
You can have them all you want.
Sherika and Lauren have a major fear of clowns, so.
Yeah.
I got a few where I'm going to go tomorrow. We're going down to one of the flea markets to see if I can get any more, because I think things that scare people, I tend to get drawn towards because I try to figure out where the fear comes from. Why, what about clowns, or what about, that type of stuff, it
like
plays into, yeah, it is. And, I'm deathly afraid of spiders. I don't care how big or how little. I don't like spiders.
Me too.
And I choose the one profession.
Spiders.
No,
I hate spiders.
Well, we hate them, but we continue to go into dark locations with cobwebs and everything, and I don't understand that.
And underground tunnels and.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments, most definitely.
no spiders for me.
Justin's a big fan of spiders, man. He loves them.
Not.
Me, I don't know. I guess everybody has fears, but I really can't tell you exactly what my fears are. I mean, as far as like physical things and whatnot, of course, there's moments where we wonder about demons and whatnot, but they don't really scare me. I mean,
That don't scare me.
They don't really scare me. I mean, a lot of people are standoffish against them, and they're scared of them and everything. But me, I'm kind of like in the middle of things. I mean, I'm a firm believer in God. I know there's a God and there's a higher power or whatnot, but Like,
Right.
especially when it comes to certain cases and whatnot. Sometimes we got to kind of use both. I'm not saying like dabbling in the occult or nothing like that. We're not about that at
Right.
all. We're not about that at all. But I mean, when you think about it, sometimes you'll have those private cases and everything that you go to that a Christian priest isn't going to be able to help you. I mean,
Right.
the entities are just non-responsive to it. And then that's when the case you bring in like your Wiccan, your high priestess, or
Yep.
one of them, somebody that's more experienced in the dark side of things to fight the dark with the darkness, pretty much. And I'm one
Right.
of those. I'm one of those type of people where I'm not afraid to use either side of the spectrum. I'll use what works to help our clients out or help our residents out to get rid of this entity, to be able to push that negative energy and whatnot out of that home so they can live in peace and restfully.
Well, we've had it, described to us that, it kind of works the same way with language, dialect. If
Yeah.
we're trying to communicate with a spirit that doesn't speak English and the only language we're talking to them in is English, they're not going to respond to us in the way they don't know what we're saying. And it's the same thing when you try to, get rid of a spirit. If they didn't practice Christianity in life, Christianity is not going to work with them in death. And, if that's our belief system, it may not be theirs. So,
Yeah.
and, I tend to look at demonic activity in a way that a lot of people don't, only because, and I describe it to people that if I spend 6 months trying to get your attention and it falls on deaf ears and blind eyes, and I'm building up the energy to finally do something to get your attention to the point where I leave a mark on your arm, or I ended up accidentally scratching you, or I accidentally knocked you down, I don't necessarily think that people should always assume that that's demonic in nature, as opposed to that was just a really, really strong energy burst that they finally got through to get your attention, because that's ultimately what they're doing every time you see something out of the corner of your eye, or you smell that cigarette smell that no one in the house smokes.
Yeah.
Well, they finally were able to do something to get your attention. I don't really think, it's always a safe bet to just call it demonic, because the person that may be trying to get your attention, those weren't the intentions at all, but that's how it's perceived.
Yeah, and a lot of these entities, they'll try to trick you. They try to trick their clients. They want you to think they're a demon, but 99% of the time, and I'll agree with Chuck and Benji and everybody, a lot of the Beyond the Light network family believes the same thing. That demon word gets thrown around way too often. People are portraying, they may be a bad entity, but that don't mean they're a demon.
Right.
And like you said in that aspect of it, responded to Christian ways and Christian beliefs. If you're dealing with the Indian spirit, they're not going to respond to our Christianity ways. That's just all there is to it.
No, we spend so much time, we don't research prior to the investigation, because a lot of what we're doing is trying to prove or disprove activity for a family. I don't want them thinking that, hey, everything we found was everything we told them. So going into it, we do our research after the investigation to see if anything correlates with what we found before we do the reveal with the client, because that way they know they didn't tell us anything. They didn't tell us where in the house they were having activity. They didn't tell us names. They didn't tell us dates or anything like that. So that way, when we get our evidence, we do the research after. The evidence is timestamped, so they know the research came after. And when we put it all together for them, the look on their faces, they know that none of that information that they gave us was present before we did the investigation. So, you know, a lot of it just, we spend so much time and effort in getting equipment, setting up the investigations, but we don't actually spend.
I agree with everybody when they say a lot of these paranormal TV shows give us a bad reputation. They give us as investigators a bad name because they go in there and they're all like, oh, we captured this evidence. But you got to think, we go to the locations. We don't have the time to spend because most of us have day-to-day jobs. We don't have a week at a time to go spend at a location. They try to make it like they caught that in a single night on those TV shows and whatnot. Most of them crews go there at least a week ahead of time, and they do filming, they do interviews, they gather all this information about these different locations that they're going to. And I mean, we do have a researcher in our crew. Sherika is actually our researcher in our crew. I mean, sometimes we'll research locations, but a lot of times, like you said, we just go in there blind. We go in there. We go in there blindly. That way, nobody can say, "Oh, y'all made that shit up" or whatnot. No, this is actually what we. This is actually what we came up with. This is actually what we done. We were able to capture this, and we didn't know nothing about this location. And one show that I really like, that I can't say I have a lot of respect for, is the Dead Files. And the reason I say I have a lot of respect for the Dead Files and Amy and Steve's work is because I've actually spoke to the producer of this show. I know I told you about that house earlier, Brian, that got me started in the paranormal. At that time, we had actually reached out. We had actually reached out to the Dead Files. Our old lead investigator, Michael Todd, had sent them pictures and whatnot that we captured from that house, and they were so compelling that it caught the Dead Files' attention, and they contacted him back. And and the Dead Files was going to come out there, but we ended up having to move before they could actually film. I mean, we had the landlord's permission for them to come out. He was going to sign the paperwork and everything. But we ended up, due to unfortunate circumstances, we ended up having to move out. But when I was talking to the producer, this is one of the things she said to me. She said, "We don't want you to do any research on the house. Don't get no information on the house. Amy doesn't want to know anything about the house before she goes in there. She wants to go in there with a clear head. She doesn't want to know any further details, any in-depth details about the house or anything like that." And that tells me right there that they're legitimate. What she does, she's doing legitimate work. Now, Steve does the research, yes, but they don't even see each other at all, period, until after the investigation. She goes in at night, he goes in at day, does the interviewing and whatnot. So that's why I really think they click, and that's why that show has blew up quite a bit. But actually, Matt and Shay, Introspection, like I'd mentioned Mr. Matthew Bennett earlier, they actually had Steve DeShavi on their show. I think it was either last week or the week before, and he's a real down-to-earth guy. He's a very cut, straightforward individual, that's for sure. He was awesome.
Cool. I know, like you say about the research and stuff, one of the things that we try and mix up our investigations so we don't get complacent in the methodology behind what we're going to do on any given investigation.
Yeah.
We've gone as far as requesting the clients a couple weeks out from us getting there to do the actual investigation to write everything down that they experience and seal it in an envelope and keep it, hidden from us until we conclude the investigation, because there's been a few that we've actually been able to do the investigation and actually go over, because we actually request that the client remain present in the location with us so they can actually watch us do the investigation. So a lot of times the clients see the evidence in real time, and then at the conclusion of it, we say, okay, can we have can you get out what you wrote down over the last couple of weeks and your experiences, and let's see if what you watched us get or capture match the thing that you've experienced. And we've had a couple pretty cool interactions with that type of investigation, and it's a lot of fun, for one, and two, it really shows the client that what we're doing is meaningful to them, because we pick up on a lot of what they're experiencing. It answers their questions, and other times we can explain we actually debunk some of the experiences that they've written down is something that's totally just either man-made or natural in nature. That we show them that it's not smoke and mirrors, it's not a sideshow, and they appreciate that.
Yeah, that's how it is for us too. I think the last couple residential places we've been to, we've actually had the client was in the home with us as well, and they were actually following us around, watching what we do, and were experiencing pretty much what we were going through at that time too. They asked, they say, hey, is it okay if we sit in with you? We're like, yeah, it's your choice. We tell them ahead of time, in case things do get to the extreme at some point in time, we just warn them ahead of time, hey, things might get real at this time, or so, volunteer at your own risk. But it's awesome to watch them sit in, because they get to go through kind of what we go through at that point in time. So we never deny them.
Right. And the cool thing is, with them sitting in, they actually get in on the spirit box sessions or the EVP sessions, because how you doing? They actually ask questions and interact with whatever's going on, because they may be the ones that actually get the answers.
Yeah, that's true, because especially if it's their home or whatever, and then they start asking the question, why is it going on with them? A lot of times they would be the one to get that response. And I know the last investigation we were on at the resident, the guy actually got physically scratched on his face while he was in the home and everything. And and Tim, he got pushed. He was just standing there in front of the doorway, and all of a sudden he gets like violently shoved up against the wall, and they were there and they witnessed all this happening. And I felt bad for the guy, because we did tell him though, is like, like I mentioned, if something happens, then be aware of it. And he gets like a little tiny scratch mark across his face, and we're like, and then everything just started picking up from that point, and it got a little crazy, but it calmed down a lot afterwards. Right.
We did a mansion up north from us here, and it was my first experience with a physical type of activity. One of we were playing a game where could we find out through investigating what room something happened in, and I ended up having something wrong with my leg, and Suzanne actually felt like she was being choked at the bottom of the staircase, where ironically someone committed suicide by hanging. Wow. One floor directly above us. So we were directly feeling the after effects of what ultimately ended their lives. So, and again, I didn't necessarily look at that as something that was so evil, but more of the aspect that the entities were trying to show us and communicate with us through their feelings of what they experienced, to give us that connection with them on a real time basis that none of the equipment could have captured. We couldn't have captured that on a voice recorder. We couldn't have captured that on camera. That they wanted us to feel what they felt at those last seconds of life before they passed. Yeah. And that is a very, very powerful moment in time that very few people actually get to experience.
Yeah, that would be a crazy experience to definitely experience. It was not long ago. I kind of had like a similar experience. It just wasn't actually in that moment type of experience. We actually went out to to it's like a mountaintop out here. It's called like Lover's Leap, I think is what Dwayne, I think what he said. He's outside taking a break right now. And we were just up on this mountaintop where some people were either they committed suicide and they jumped off. And we could all feel the energy and the vibe from being out there and everything. Well, it wasn't till the was the next night. It might have been that. No, it was the next night. My son, he woke up with a terrible nightmare, and he really don't ever have nightmares, and so to speak. And I don't know if it was something there from that followed me, but the next night I had a nightmare, and I really don't ever do. And what it was is I had a vision of the people actually jumping off the cliff, and this was 2 nights after the investigation. So I vividly, it was weird. It was crystal clear. I seen the 2 people in like white gowns, white dresses, or whatever it may be, actually combine hands together and just run full force and just full-fledged jump right off this cliff. And I'm in the moment. I felt like and there was allegedly a third person there. I don't know if it was, I think they said it was a child. So I don't know. I look like I envisioned myself as that third person that was there. And then all of a sudden I can remember as me being the third person running after them. I never got to the actual cliff before I woke up, but it kind of felt like deja vu in a moment. Like I relived that moment from being out there 2 days later. And it was, right. I never had a dream like that was so vividly crystal clear.
That would definitely wake you up.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned.
Oh, go ahead.
What was that? No. You had mentioned, something following you home, and that's an aspect that a lot of people ask us about when we do our public investigations with people. Is anything going to come home with me? And unfortunately, I can't lie to them. There's always that possibility. Exactly. But we do opening prayers and we've done closing prayers, because that is definitely not something that, I enjoy on a day-to-day basis when we have investigations, because there's times when we've actually had an entire week where everything was just so off, and we're lucky enough to pinpoint it. We had done one in Gettysburg and had one of the children, come home with us, and fortunately they listened to what our instructions were, and we ended up taking them back down with us. But it can be fun, but it can also be detrimental and tiring. So the dream thing, that's a really different aspect when you throw that into it, when it gets that personal that you're dreaming, and being in that moment. That's a whole nother level that a lot of people, again, may never experience.
Yeah, it really creeped me out. I immediately told Dwayne the next day about it, and I was like, dude, you'll never believe this damn dream I had. And then he didn't even, he was like, what? And I told him, he was like, it was just vivid. But yeah, I mean, the risk of being followed home, it's happened to me a couple of times. Even, it doesn't matter, like, you tell them not to come, but they kind of don't get the point. Hey, I don't want to be followed home, but they still come along. They still need either help or whatever it may be.
Yep, you don't want to be here, but you can't come with me. So, go somewhere, but don't come. Yeah, it is a very fine line with what we do and what we put ourselves into. I a lot of times offer, and people have looked at me very, very confused, but I offer my energy up for extra energy, and I know I put myself at increased risk with doing that, but I'm strong enough in my faith with what I've gone through over the last 13 years with my own, health and questioning, God and things like that. And through the death of my best, very good friend, and getting into this field, I've gotten back to my faith, and I believe in it strong enough that I can use that to shield and deflect and protect myself enough. But we put ourselves out there, tired, 36-hour investigations, weekend investigations, 24 hours with no sleep. And, we wear ourselves thin and continue to push on during an investigation to the point where there's almost that too fine of a line where, we offer too much or do too much and we can't come back from it because we're just so depleted. And everybody on the team is depleted because you're just doing a marathon. And, that's the trouble with people wanting to do it, but they don't understand the dangers of it.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of how we were just this last weekend. That's kind of how we were. We had an investigation on Thursday night. We turned around and did an all-nighter. We pulled from dusk till dawn, basically, and then we were supposed to have another one the next day, and then we were just just drained out. The Friday night investigation just was like, ugh. I could have went again because I could have pushed myself to go, but then that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to over push it. You want to give yourself, if you feel like you can't go, don't go, because you never know what you're opening yourself up to, that vulnerability in case something bad happens. It's already got you weak from investigating. You never know. So
that dreaded para hangover.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've all, I think almost any of us in the paranormal field have had a paranormal hangover at some point in time.
A couple.
Yeah.
At some point in time, we actually, the night before Friday night, before we went to the old Arkansas hospital, we done a private residence that was pretty intense.
Yeah, I was telling him about that.
And we'd actually had a third investigation set up for Saturday night after we left the hospital. And I had to reschedule because I just didn't feel like we would have enough energy and enough stamina left to do that third one in a row like that. I think that would have been too much on our whole team. So that's why we rescheduled. That's actually the one that we'll be doing after tonight's show.
Okay.
So yeah, that one, a little bit of craziness has been going on there. The client stated that the entities have been writing words on her legs. So
What?
yeah, so that one should be pretty intense, to say the least.
That'd be different.
It's different.
Yeah, and then we also have another investigation tomorrow night. We actually won't have a radio show tomorrow night. Normally we have them on Fridays and Saturdays, but here lately we've been having to switch them off due to investigations and whatnot. So tomorrow, I'll just fill everybody in briefly on tomorrow night's investigation that we'll be doing. The lady said wanted to give you a little bit of information about that room. It's actually at a motel that's still in use. We've been there before, and I'll just throw this short, quick story out there for everybody. The last time we went there, a lot of crazy shit happened. The last time we went there, we had this chick Allison with our old team that had went with us, and her mom had passed away. And her mom gave her like this protection pendant, and basically this entity that was in there ripped the protection pendant off her neck. She was standing right beside me. She didn't do it. Something physically ripped the pendant off of her.
I was standing right in front
off of her neck and threw it across the room. And then Justin, I looked over at Justin because he was standing across from us. I looked over at Justin, and I saw this big black tall mass with my own eyes standing behind Justin. It was creepy as hell, I'm not gonna lie. And about that time, it looked like it was gonna snatch Justin up off the floor. And Justin just bent over and started bawling. Justin doesn't cry often at all. He rarely cries ever. but this entity had done this to him and made him cry. Well, it didn't stop there. So Allison was kind of a very sensitive person to it. And so Allison, I asked her, I was just threw the question out there. I was all, do you think it's going to stay home? Or do you think it's going to go home with one of us? Or it's going to stay here, it's going to go with one of us? And she said it's unsure whether it wants to go with Michael, which is our old lead investigator, or stay here with the lady, the client. And I was all, okay. And she's all, it keeps saying something about dialysis. And it didn't dawn on me, it didn't ring a bell at first. And so I asked the lady, I said, do you know anybody that's on dialysis? And she's all, yeah, I am. So at first I was like, okay, well, cool, you know. I'm all like, I didn't think it was cool by any means. It's never cool when somebody has to go through dialysis and whatnot, obviously. Right. But she's all, she's all, yeah, I'm on dialysis. So it didn't dawn on me until we got to the skating rink to pick up my nephew, Justin's son, from a birthday party that he had went to. I was like, it dawned on me that Michael Todd's dad was in the hospital. On dialysis with kidney failure. Big time kidney failure. And then it dawned on me, and I was like, that's why it said it was unsure whether it was going to stay or go with Michael. It's going to take his dad or try to take his dad. Well, 2 days after we left that investigation, Michael posted on Facebook that his dad passed away.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah.
So, and the craziest thing about it is I knew it was going to happen. I couldn't say for sure that it was, but I told them, and I know Justin remembers me saying something about it. I predicted that. I predicted that craziness. That blew my mind that I predicted what was going to happen before it did. I said it's going to go, and still to this day, I have not been able to bring it up and tell Michael about it. What I felt truly happened to his dad. I mean, how could you? How could anybody say something that what we do caused your dad to pass away? I mean, that's just.
How would you even start that? Like, how would you? Yeah, you couldn't even bring that up. There just wouldn't be no way.
And so I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit nervous about tomorrow night's investigation, but I know this is what we signed up for. This is one of those unfortunate events that we got ourselves into when we stepped into the paranormal field, but I'm a firm believer, as well as the rest of my team. We're all firm believers. We can't not help people. We can't turn away a case just because of past experiences or whatnot. We're going to have to go, and we're going to have to do our best to cleanse their place of residence and to rid them of this, even if it is evil, bad, dark energy. We got to do our best to help the client and get a resolution for them. And so, I mean, that's unfortunately sometimes that's what we got to do. Even like you mentioned earlier, Brian, even if it means sacrificing ourselves to an extent, that's what we do. That's what we signed up for. That's what we were aware we were getting into. And that's what we have to do to make sure that our clients get the help that they need and deserve, and to make sure this energy and this entities don't keep messing with them.
Right. Well, you'd brought up a good point that, does what we do directly have a cause and effect? Does that put that into motion? And I'm not sure if what you guys experienced was the cause of, loss of life, as opposed to maybe what we do and what comes through to us personally during, before, during, and after an investigation doesn't necessarily happen to prepare us for what is about to happen, because, the thing that, the one part of what we do is we communicate with spirits. And if there's a loved one that is close to that other side, that there may be a spirit, whether it's an angel spirit that's with us, or someone that's coming through with somebody that doesn't see that coming up in the near future, and they're trying to give us keys and insight into, hey, the possibility is there to prepare us for the loss of life, as opposed to being a cause of that loss. And an interesting, I don't know how long you guys do this for, and I don't want to keep, spilling on what you guys are talking about.
No, you're
but
good.
This is a really cool part where you guys had brought that up, and I had an exact experience with this in January. My grandmother had been suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's for about 2 years. And, I'd been hearing conversations back and forth with my mother and my father, and my aunt about my grandmother for, 2 years. And I'd seen her, and, it just wasn't the same. And this is the one that I told you guys about from the funeral home. So January 26th, which was, 6 days after my birthday, and I'm sitting there, it was a Thursday night, and I had gotten a call. I talked to my mother in the morning, and here my grandmother had a massive heart attack in the morning and never woke up. She was in a coma. So, I had put a message out to the team, hey guys, keep my grandmother in your thoughts and prayers, and I got a phone call from one of our mediums, and he said, hey, is everything okay? And I said, everything's good. I just, I don't want her to be alone when she passes. And he said, she's not alone. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he started describing the gentleman that was in the hospital room with her. And I said, dude, you're really going to have to be a little more specific. I said, because there's, unfortunately, I have to tell you this part of it, even though you're a medium, this is a little bit of information that you're going to need. I said, there was 2 of them. My grandfather and my step-grandfather both passed. And he started describing the clothing that the one he saw was wearing, and the other one would have been different. And he just kept saying, get that SOB out of here, get this SOB out of here. And I said, what are the clothes that the one that you see is wearing? And he said, he's dressed right dress, shiny shoes, pressed pants, crisp shirt. And I said, okay. I said, what I'll tell you is my real grandfather was in the Army band. My step-grandfather was one of Patton's drivers during, D-Day, during the invasion in Germany. So my real grandfather would have been dressed right dress, crisp pants, shiny shoes. My other one would have been a dirt hole. So, when I got off the phone with him, I knew Thursday night that my grandmother was going to pass, by the next day, because my grandfather was waiting to take her home. Sure enough, Friday morning at 6 o'clock, I got a call from my dad that my grandmother had passed away.
Wow.
Was, did doing this cause, and I had some heart issues last year with something that I had, before, and they cleared up. So was my heart issues a sign that something more was coming, or was it the cause of it? I like to think that someone is showing me something to prepare me for an event, to kind of get me ready. And, to this day, I'm so happy that my grandmother is in a better place with the person she wanted to be with and not suffering anymore. So, and I think I just cut somebody off. I think they were getting ready to say something.
No,
I don't like doing that.
No, you're good. No, it's crazy how sometimes we have these so-called abilities to, I guess you can say predict the future. And I wouldn't really say it would be like predicting the future as much as, I don't
Intuition.
Even know intuition. There we go. That's a more proper word for it. And me personally, like I say, every time I bring the subject up, I never take credit for my abilities that I have. I have very strong abilities as well when it comes to the paranormal. I've told them what was going to happen before it happens on several occasions, and also Jen B, another one of our amazing family members here on Beyond the Light Network. She also has a show on Saturday nights. I have quite the psychic medium-like abilities as well. I can point out where they're at. I let the team know what's going to happen before it happens a lot of times, and it's crazy. And really all of us. I mean, really most of my team has those abilities. I think really in all actuality, if you really open your mind up to it and open up and see it from a different perspective, we all have that ability to some extent. We all have, like they say, it's the sixth sense. We all have that ability to hear and see things that others normally wouldn't. People that aren't so open to it, such as ourselves, and to look at it from that point of view. If people were more open-minded, which I know there's a lot of, and I'm not downing on nobody, dogging on nobody by any means, a lot of people are so closed-minded. That's why they don't see the things we see. That's why they don't hear the things that we hear as investigators and whatnot. That's why a lot of these skeptics, and they won't even give it the opportunity to communicate with them. They won't even give it the opportunity to give it a chance to open their mind even enough to acknowledge the fact that they're there. And honestly, I believe that's why these entities get pissed off and do some of the things they do to them. They're like, hey, you're going to pay attention to me whether you want to or not, basically, is what they're telling them. And
it's no different than if we wanted someone's attention, we're going to do what we have to do to get it. And unfortunately, you know, you go that extra mile to do it. You know, we got two sensitives, a medium on the team. They do a great job. Kat, Albert, and Jess. They're incredible together as much as they are apart. Suzanne, the other founder of the team, she is increasing her abilities, you know, to the point where she is gaining confidence in, you know, going off and following those signals that are coming through that she's picking up on. I mean, it's amazing to see. And her daughter and her granddaughter, you know, they're coming into their own on the team. I mean, the 10 of us function so well together that I love the equipment. I love trying to figure it out and seeing what makes the equipment work and why certain things happen with certain pieces of equipment and not with others. That, you know, I love watching them work because they're just so much, and especially when I take them in blind, you know, I may have some of the information and they don't even know the address. They don't know the people's names. And it's so fun to watch them get this stuff from nowhere, you know, just from what's coming through. And you're saying all that stuff, and it matches and mirrors so much to, you know, how we are, that it's cool to, you know, hear of another team that kind of uses the same technique or style. Because when I hear you talking about the certain things, it's like, okay, cool. So you know, it's like watching us, and it's a lot of fun to watch it unfold.
Oh yeah, and I think it's of utmost importance when it comes to being with the paranormal team. Y'all all got to be on the same page. Y'all all got to have the same goals to get things accomplished, and not to mention, a lot of my team, I don't know for sure about y'all's team, but a lot of my team, we feed off of each other. Basically, when we walk into a location, our energies just click, and we'll start calling things out almost in unison. It's crazy. We'll be like, "Oh, this is where we need to go,"